All right, let's just jump right into it. We're going to talk about the absolute fundamental components of life itself, biological macromolecules. I mean, these things are in every single bite of food you eat, and they literally make up every cell in your body.
So let me kick this off with a question for you. What are the building blocks of, say, the breakfast you had this morning? And for that matter, what are the building blocks of, well, you? It sounds like this massive, complicated question, right? But the answer is actually surprisingly simple and elegant.
The answer? They're called biological macromolecules. And honestly, the best way to think about them is like an essential team. Just four key players that work together to build and run, well, every single living thing on this planet.
Okay, so before we actually meet this team, we kind of need to understand the basic rules of the game. The rules of construction. How does life go from something super simple to something incredibly complex?
Well, it all starts with something called a monomer. This is your single basic unit. And the absolute easiest way to picture this, think of a single Lego brick. It's simple, it's uniform, and it's just waiting to be connected to something else. And you guessed it. When you start linking a whole bunch of those monomers, those Lego bricks together, you get a polymer. This is your finished Lego creation. It's a big, complex structure, but it's built from those same simple, repeating parts. So that's the big picture. But how does this actually happen on a chemical level? Well, life basically has two core processes for this, one for building these polymers up and one for breaking them back down. You can think of it like a universal construction manual for all of life.
Okay, so on one side, you've got dehydration synthesis. Let's break that down. Dehydration, losing water, right? To link two monomers together, the cell literally removes a water molecule, and that forms a strong bond. This process takes energy. Then on the other side, you have hydrolysis. Hydro means water, and lysis means to split. So to break a polymer apart, a water molecule is added back in, which splits the bond and releases energy. So you build by removing water, and you break by adding water. It really is that fundamental. All right, with the rules out of the way, it's time to meet the first member of our team, the carbohydrates. Let me put it this way. When your body needs energy, and it needs it now, carbs are who it calls. But carbohydrates are way more versatile than you might think. Yeah, sure, they provide that immediate energy hit in the form of glucose, but they also act as stored energy, that's starch in plants, and something called glycogen in our muscles and liver. And they can even be structural. They form the super tough cellulose that makes up plant cell walls, and even the chitin in an insect's exoskeleton. In fact, cellulose is the most abundant organic polymer on the entire planet. How crazy is that? Okay, next up on the team, let's meet the lipids. Now, if carbs are the fast fuel you burn for a quick sprint, lipids are your long-term energy reserve, the stuff you rely on for the marathon. But they're also master protectors and even communicators. You've probably heard about saturated and unsaturated fats, right? Well, here's the key difference. Saturated fats have these nice, straight chains that let them pack together really tightly. That's why they're solid at room temperature, like butter. But unsaturated fats, they have double bonds that create these kinks or bends in their chains. Because of those kinks, they just can't pack together as neatly, which is why they stay liquid, like olive oil. And please, don't think lipids are just about fats and oils. It's a huge family. You have phospholipids, which form the membrane of every single one of your cells. I mean, they create the very boundary between life and the outside world. Then you have waxes, which provide that natural waterproofing you see on leaves. And of course, steroids, which are the precursors for crucial hormones like testosterone and vital molecules like cholesterol. All right, let's move on to the third member of our team, and you could argue this is the most diverse and busiest group of them all, the proteins. Here's the deal. If a cell has a job that needs to get done, there is almost certainly a protein that does it. They are the literal workforce of life. I mean, just take a look at this list. It's incredible. They're the enzymes that digest your food. They're the hemoglobin that transports oxygen through your blood. They're the keratin and collagen that build your hair and skin. They act as hormones like insulin. They're the antibodies that defend you. And they're even the tiny little motors that make your muscles contract. Seriously, there is a protein for just about every task you can imagine. So here's the absolute most important thing to understand about proteins. Shape is everything. Its specific, carefully folded 3D structure is what allows it to do its unique job. And if that shape changes, even just a tiny, tiny bit, well, the consequences can be massive. Let me give you a really powerful example.
Let's take that hemoglobin protein again, the one that carries oxygen in your blood. It's made up of a chain of about 600 amino acids. Now imagine a tiny mistake, a change to just one of those 600 building blocks.
Just one tiny change. What happens? It's enough to cause sickle cell anemia. That single error causes the hemoglobin proteins to clump together, which forces the red blood cells into that weird, distorted sickle shape. These misshapen cells then clog up blood vessels. It is a really powerful and tragic example of why a protein's structure is so incredibly critical to its function. And that brings us to our fourth and final team member, the nucleic acids. Now, these guys aren't the fuel and they aren't the workers. No, they are the architects. They hold the master blueprint for life itself. You've definitely heard of them. There are two main types, DNA and RNA. Think of it this way. DNA is the priceless master copy of all the genetic instructions. It's kept super safe in the cell's nucleus, organized in that famous, stable double helix. RNA, on the other hand, is like a working copy. It's a temporary, single-stranded message that takes a specific instruction from the DNA and carries it out of the nucleus to the cell's construction sites, where the proteins are actually built. And this whole process creates the fundamental information flow of all of biology. It's so important, it's called the central dogma. Information flows from DNA to RNA to protein. The permanent blueprint in DNA is transcribed into a temporary RNA message. That message is then translated to build a specific protein. And then that protein goes off and does its job. That is how the blueprint becomes the actual building.
So, there you have it. That's the whole team, the four essential players that make all of life work. You've got your carbohydrates, the fast fuel, your lipids, the energy saver and protector, your proteins, the versatile workforce, and finally the nucleic acids, the master blueprint that directs the whole show.
And that really leaves us with a final kind of mind-blowing thought. Just think about it. From only these four basic molecular toolkits, nature builds the unbelievable diversity of life that we see all around us. Everything from a single bacterium to a giant blue whale. It's just an incredible testament to how the most profound complexity can come from just a few simple, elegant rules.